AITA for exposing my husband's family after they kicked me out while I was pregnant? I'm 27 years old, I work in digital marketing, and 6 months ago I gave birth to the most beautiful baby in the world in the middle of what is probably the most dramatic divorce you can imagine. The thing is, when I got pregnant, my husband accused me of being unfaithful. He kicked me out of our house in the middle of the night with one suitcase and my 4-month pregnant belly, all because his mother, that manipulative witch, faked some fertility results to make him believe he was sterile. And the worst part, what really breaks my soul to this day, is that he believed her without a second thought, without giving me the benefit of the doubt. Not at all. But anyway, I suppose I should start from the beginning because this story is long and has many layers. I met Derek when we were 23. We worked at the same tech company in the city, and honestly I fell head over heels for him. He was funny, smart, ambitious, and we had this incredible chemistry from day one. We got married 2 years later in a small but beautiful ceremony at a local vineyard. And I genuinely thought I had found my person, you know, the one you were going to grow old with and all that. The first few months were perfect, like a never-ending honeymoon. But then we started trying to have a baby, and that's when everything started to get complicated. We had been trying for about a year and a half, month after month, seeing those negative pregnancy tests, and the frustration was brutal. Derek was getting more and more anxious. I cried every time I got my period, and the pressure was slowly wearing us down. His mother, Judith, didn't help at all. Every time she saw us, she'd ask when we were going to give her grandchildren, as if it were so easy, as if we could just snap our fingers and make it happen. The relationship with Judith was always complicated, to put it mildly. Since Derek and I started dating, she made it very clear that I wasn't good enough for her precious son. I come from a normal middle-class family. My mom, Patricia, raised my 2 brothers and me on her own after my dad left us when I was about 8. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. And yes, maybe in her youth she was a bit of a free spirit. She went out a lot and had several boyfriends before settling down. But that doesn't make her a bad person. Judith always looked down on her for it. She'd make comments about my mom's past, about how she raised us, about everything basically. Once at a family dinner she said, with that fake little smile she has, that she hoped I hadn't inherited my mother's habits. Derek mumbled something that time, telling her to be nice, but he never really stood up to her. You know? The infertility issue was slowly killing our marriage. We went to several doctors and had a bunch of tests run. Everything came back seemingly normal, but still nothing happened. Derek became obsessed with finding a solution. He would stay up until 3 a.m. searching online, reading about special diets, supplements, and every conceivable method. I just wanted him to relax a little, for us to let things happen naturally, but he was determined. And then his uncle, Dr. Malcolm, Judith's brother, who owned a quite prestigious fertility clinic downtown, offered to help. He said he would run all the tests for us at a family discount, that he would figure out exactly what was going on. At that moment I thought it was a generous gesture, a sign of family supporting each other. I was so naive. We went to Dr. Malcolm's clinic about 3 times over 2 months. They drew my blood, did ultrasounds, and ran analyses on Derek too. The whole process seemed super professional. Dr. Malcolm was always very kind to me, very reassuring. He told us that sometimes these things just take time and that we shouldn't worry, just keep trying. And we believed him because he was a doctor and he was family. Why wouldn't we? We kept trying for several more months after that. And just when we were about to consider more serious options like IVF, the miracle happened. I took a home pregnancy test on a Tuesday morning, almost out of habit by then, without any real hope. 2 lines appeared. 2 clear, unmistakable lines. I just stood there, staring at that test for about 10 minutes, unable to believe it, crying in the bathroom, literally shaking. I told Derek that same night when he got home from work. I had bought 5 more tests during the day and they were all positive, so I was sure. I put all the tests in a little gift box and gave it to him while we were having dinner. When he opened it and saw what it was, the look on his face was indescribable. He cried. I cried. We hugged and jumped around the living room like a couple of teenagers. It was, without a doubt, the happiest moment of my life up to that point. Derek called his family immediately to share the news. He even organized a special dinner with everyone to celebrate the following weekend. My mom was also over the moon. It was going to be her first grandchild, and she hugged me so tight she nearly squeezed the air out of me. Everything seemed perfect, as if things were finally going our way after so much struggle. But then something changed. Something broke in a way I didn't understand at the time. About a week after we announced the pregnancy, Derek started acting weird, distant, cold. He looked at me in a strange way I'd never seen before. At first, I thought maybe he was stressed with work or just processing the news in his own way. I had read that sometimes men react like that. He stopped kissing me in the mornings, stopped asking how I was feeling with the morning sickness, and started going to bed before me and getting up earlier, basically avoiding me. When I tried to talk to him, he'd just say everything was fine, that he was just tired, but I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut, beyond the pregnancy nausea, that feeling that something terrible was about to happen. And then one night, about 2 weeks after our announcement, he came home with a look on his face I will never forget. He walked straight into the living room where I was watching TV. His eyes were red, as if he'd been crying or hadn't slept in days. He told me we needed to talk. I sat up straight immediately because his tone was terrifying, so serious it made my blood run cold. Derek stood in front of me, visibly shaking, and asked me who I had cheated on him with. Just like that. No preamble, no context. I asked him what on earth he was talking about. I thought maybe he was having some kind of breakdown. But then he pulled some papers out of his jacket pocket and threw them on the coffee table. They were medical results from his uncle Dr. Malcolm's lab. Derek told me, in a voice that was both broken and full of hate, that those results showed he was infertile. That according to the tests they had done months ago, his sperm count was practically zero. That it was physically impossible for him to have gotten me pregnant. I just sat there, unable to process what I was hearing. I told him it was impossible, that there had to be a mistake with those tests, that the baby was his. I had never ever been with anyone else. But he wasn't listening. He was like a different person, screaming that I had cheated on him, that I'd been lying to him this whole time, that I had probably been unfaithful for months or even years. I tried to get close to him, to touch his arm, to make him listen to reason, but he pushed me away with such force that I almost fell over. He told me to get out of his house, that I had 1 hour to pack my things and leave. 1 hour. I was 4 months pregnant with his child because it was his child regardless of what those papers said, and he was kicking me out like I was trash. I begged, I cried, I pleaded with him to listen to me, to think clearly, to understand that those results had to be wrong because I had never betrayed him. But it was no use. He had already made up his mind. He had already condemned me. I went up to our room, my heart pounding so hard I felt it would burst out of my chest, and started throwing clothes into a suitcase, not even looking at what I was grabbing. I was on complete autopilot. My brain couldn't process the magnitude of what was happening. Derek stayed downstairs while I packed. I could hear him pacing back and forth, probably trying to process everything himself. Probably just as destroyed, but too blinded by the supposed betrayal to stop and think for a second. I came downstairs with my suitcase about 40 minutes later. My face was swollen from crying, and he wouldn't even look at me. He just opened the front door and stood there waiting for me to leave. I told him one last time that the baby was his, that I loved him, that I didn't understand what was happening, but that we could figure it out together. He told me he never wanted to see me again, and that his lawyer would be in contact to start the divorce proceedings. I walked out of that house, our home, with my suitcase in one hand and my purse in the other, pregnant and completely shattered. I drove to my mom's house, crying so hard it's a miracle I didn't get into an accident. It was around 11 p.m. when I arrived. I knocked on the door, and when my mom opened it and saw me standing there with my luggage, she knew immediately that something horrible had happened. She pulled me into a hug, and I just collapsed. I told her everything between sobs that made it hard for her to understand me. My mom was furious. She wanted to drive over there and confront Derek right then and there, but I stopped her knowing it would be pointless. She made me some tea, led me to my old bedroom, which still had some of my teenage things in it, and sat with me until I fell asleep from pure emotional exhaustion. The next few days were a blur of tears, confusion, and a sadness so deep I thought I would drown in it. On the third day I hired a lawyer. If Derek wanted a divorce, if he truly believed I had cheated on him without even giving me a chance to prove my innocence, then I wasn't going to just sit around and wait. I told my lawyer the whole story, showed her the papers Derek had thrown at me, and explained that it was all impossible because I had never been with anyone else. She suggested we get a paternity test as soon as the baby was born, that it would clear everything up. But at that moment I just wanted to move forward, to protect the baby I was carrying, and to start healing. We filed the divorce papers that same week and had the notice sent to Derek. There was no response from him for days, which surprised me. I thought he would be eager to get the divorce over with as quickly as possible. But then, about 2 weeks after he kicked me out, Derek called me. It was like 20 missed calls in an hour. Desperate text messages saying he needed to talk to me urgently, that he had discovered something, begging me to please call him back. I didn't want to hear from him. Every time I saw his name on my phone, I felt a mix of rage and pain so intense I could barely breathe. But my mom convinced me to at least listen to what he had to say, if only for my own peace of mind. I called him back from my mom's phone since I had blocked his number. When he answered, he sounded completely different. Broken. Desperate in a way I had never heard. Derek told me that his mother and his uncle, Dr. Malcolm, had faked the fertility results. He said he found out by accident when he went to Dr. Malcolm's clinic to request copies of some other tests. A confused nurse asked him why he needed more copies of results that had been normal. Normal. He demanded to see the original lab reports, and there it was, in black and white. His fertility was completely normal. It always had been. There was no problem. Dr. Malcolm had created fake results, supposedly at Judith's request, to make Derek believe he was infertile. That way, when I got pregnant, he would automatically assume I had cheated. It was a plan so twisted, so elaborate and evil, that at first I couldn't even process it. Who does something like that? What kind of mother destroys her own son's marriage that way? Derek was sobbing on the phone, begging me to forgive him, saying he had been an idiot, that he should have believed me, that he wanted us to get back together. And I just felt this cold, deep rage. I asked him how he dared to call me after what he did. After throwing me out onto the street while I was pregnant, after accusing me of the worst, without giving me a single chance to defend myself. I told him his mother had gotten exactly what she wanted, she had destroyed our marriage, and that he had been the perfect tool because he chose to believe her over me without even blinking. Derek kept apologizing, saying he was going to cut all contact with his mother, that he was going to file a complaint against Dr. Malcolm with the medical board, that he would do anything to fix it. But I was done. I was tired and exhausted from it all. I told him to proceed with the divorce, that I was never coming back to him, that what he had done was unforgivable. He begged me to at least see him in person to talk face to face, but I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I ever would be. I hung up the phone and just sat there on my mom's sofa, with my nearly 6-month belly, feeling my baby move inside me. And I wondered how we had gotten to this point. We had been so happy. We had plans, dreams. And now it was all destroyed by the manipulation of a woman who was supposed to be family. My mom hugged me and just let me cry again. It seemed like crying was the only thing I could do anymore. The following months were strange. The divorce moved forward without any issues because Derek didn't contest a single thing. He signed whatever his lawyer put in front of him and agreed to all my terms. His lawyer contacted mine to discuss custody of the baby once she was born, and that's when things got a little tense. I didn't want Derek to have shared custody right away. I wanted time to adjust to being a single mom, to heal, and to establish a routine with the baby before starting to share her. But his lawyer insisted that Derek had rights as a father, and that he wanted to be present from day one. We reached a temporary agreement where Derek could have supervised visits at my mom's house for the first few weeks, and then we would reevaluate the situation. When I was in my 8th month, Derek asked to see me to talk in person. We had already had a few phone calls about practical matters, like the baby's health insurance and who would be in the delivery room. But nothing emotional, nothing personal. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my mom's house. Neutral territory. Public. Safe. When I arrived, he was already there. He looked terrible, honestly, as if he hadn't slept well in months. He had lost weight and had this deep sadness in his eyes that almost made me feel bad for him. Almost. We sat down and there was an awkward silence at first. Neither of us knew where to begin. Derek told me he had cut all contact with his mother. He hadn't seen or spoken to her since he found out what she did. He said she had tried to justify herself, claiming she did it because she believed I was a bad influence, because she thought I was just like my mother and would ruin his life. He told me that his uncle, Dr. Malcolm, had lost his medical license and was under investigation by the state medical board for falsifying records. He would likely face serious legal charges. He told me all this as if it were good news, as if their punishment somehow fixed what he had done to me. I asked him directly why he had believed them so quickly, why his first reaction to seeing those results was to think I had betrayed him instead of questioning the validity of the papers. He was quiet for a long time and then admitted that his mother had been planting seeds of doubt about me for months. He explained that Judith had been telling him I was leaving work suspiciously late, that I was probably seeing someone else, that women like me from families like mine didn't value marriage the same way. She had been systematically poisoning his mind against me, laying the groundwork for the moment she would show him the fake results. And Derek, instead of defending me, instead of trusting me, had let those seeds of doubt grow. I told him that was even worse, that he had doubted me long before he ever saw those papers, that our relationship obviously hadn't been as solid as I thought if it was that easy to convince him of my supposed infidelity. He had no answer for that, just more apologies that sounded hollow at that point. Then he begged me again to consider giving our marriage another chance. He said he had started going to therapy, that he was working on his trust issues and his relationship with his mother, that he loved me, that he loved our baby on the way, and that he wanted us to be a family. And as I looked at this man who had been my husband, the love of my life at one point, I felt absolutely nothing. No love, no hate, just an emptiness and a resignation that what we had was dead. His mother had killed it and he had held the weapon. I told him no, that the divorce was final and that we could be good co-parents for our child's sake, but we would never be a couple again. I saw the heartbreak in his eyes when I said it, but honestly at that moment I didn't care. I also used that meeting to make some ground rules clear. I told him that neither his mother nor his uncle would ever have contact with my baby. Ever. Under any circumstances. That if he wanted to be in our child's life, that was non-negotiable. Derek agreed immediately. He said he didn't want them near the baby either. That what they had done was unforgivable. We also talked about how we would handle visits, schedules, and the practical logistics of sharing a child when we were no longer together. It was a sad conversation, but a necessary one. Adult and civilized, despite all the pain and history between us. Before leaving, Derek asked for my forgiveness again. He told me he was going to dedicate the rest of his life to making it up to me somehow and to being the best father possible. I just nodded and left. The day I went into labor, I called Derek as we had agreed. It was around 3 a.m. I was at my mom's house when my water broke, and the contractions started getting serious. My mom drove me to the hospital, and I sent Derek a text from the car. He arrived at the hospital about half an hour after we did, looking terrified and excited at the same time. My labor lasted for 14 hours. They were the longest and most painful hours of my life. And Derek was there the whole time. He stayed in the waiting room for most of it because I had decided I only wanted my mom with me during the delivery. But the nurses let him in when I was about to give birth, as I had agreed he could be present for the moment itself. When my baby was finally born, when the doctor placed her in my arms and I saw her wrinkled, perfect little face, all the pain and suffering of the past few months just evaporated for a moment. It was a girl, Hazel, and she was absolutely perfect. Derek was crying, I was crying, my mom was crying, we were all an emotional mess. Derek asked if he could hold her and I said yes. Seeing him hold our daughter with such tenderness and admiration made me feel something I hadn't felt for him in a long time. Not romantic love, but a sort of understanding that despite everything, he loved this baby just as much as I did. My mom took photos of the three of us, of Hazel, of the moment. And even though our divorce had been finalized 2 weeks before her birth, for a moment, it almost felt like we were a family. The first few days after we left the hospital were chaotic. Hazel didn't sleep for more than 2 hours at a time and cried a lot. I was exhausted and in pain, and the idea of doing this all alone was terrifying. Derek came to my mom's house every day to see Hazel and help with whatever he could. At first it was awkward and tense having him there, but gradually we settled into this new dynamic. He changed diapers, gave her a bottle when I needed to rest, and stayed up with her when she cried in the early hours of the morning. One night, about a week after we got home, Derek fell asleep on the living room sofa with Hazel sleeping on his chest. My mom saw them and told me that maybe eventually we could find a way to make all of this work. Derek basically lived with us for the first 3 weeks of Hazel's life. He slept on the couch, got up at night to help me, ran errands and bought anything we needed. He also took the opportunity to formally apologize to my mom. He sat down with her one afternoon while Hazel was asleep and asked for her forgiveness for all the horrible things he had thought and said about her, for believing his own mother that my mom was a bad influence, and for not defending her when Judith made her derogatory comments. My mom, who is an incredibly strong but also very generous woman, told him she forgave him. She said the only thing that mattered now was Hazel, and that we all needed to work together to give her the best life possible. 2 weeks ago, the three of us were in my mom's living room. Hazel was in her bassinet, sleeping peacefully, and Derek and I were watching TV in a comfortable silence. Suddenly, he said he wanted to apologize to me again, officially. He knew he had already done it a million times, but he needed me to know that he understood the magnitude of what he had done. He told me he had destroyed our family by trusting the wrong person, by not fighting for me when he should have, and by allowing his mother to manipulate his perception of me for so long. He said that if he could go back and change everything, he would, but he understood the damage was done and that I had moved on. I told him I forgave him, not because what he did was okay or because I wanted to get back with him, but because carrying that anger wasn't doing me or Hazel any good. Right now, we are in this strange space where we aren't a couple, but we are a family in some way. Derek is moving into an apartment near my mom's house to be close to Hazel, and I'm okay with that. We've established a visitation and custody schedule that works for both of us, and so far, it's going better than I expected. There are still difficult moments like when Derek mentioned something from our past when we were happy, and I feel that stabbing pain of remembering what we had and what we lost. Or when I see other families together and think about how things could have been different if Judith hadn't been so toxic, and if Derek had been strong enough to defend us. Hazel is a month old now, and she is the best thing that has ever happened to me. Honestly, I watch her sleep and wonder how something so small can contain so much love and so much hope. Derek is a good father. I have to admit it. He takes his role very seriously, and is committed to being present in our daughter's life. I don't know what will happen with us in the long run. If we will eventually find new partners and have to navigate that uncomfortable situation, or if we will just continue like this as friendly co-parents who share a daughter. What I do know is that I will never forget what happened. How I felt that night he kicked me out of our home. The betrayal and the pain of him not believing me. Those wounds are going to leave permanent scars. The last I heard about Judith was when my lawyer informed me she had tried to file a lawsuit to obtain visitation rights with Hazel. Obviously, the court rejected it. Grandparents don't have automatic rights, and we have plenty of documentation of what she did. Derek told me she calls him constantly, leaving tearful messages begging him to forgive her, to reconsider cutting her out of his life completely, but he is standing firm. He says what she did is unforgivable and that Hazel will never know her. Part of me feels a sliver of pity for her, because that is her granddaughter and she will never see her. But the much larger part of me thinks she deserves it. Actions have consequences, and she chose to destroy a family because of her own stupid prejudices. Yesterday, Derek was here giving Hazel her bottle, and she was looking up at him with those big, dark eyes she has. He was telling her about all the plans he has for when she grows up, the places he wants to take her, the things he wants to teach her. And I was watching them from across the room, this small broken family but functioning somehow, and for the first time in a long time I felt a sense of peace. It isn't the happy ending I imagined when I married Derek 4 years ago. It definitely isn't the life we planned together. But it's what we have, and we're making it work the best we can. Hazel deserves to have both of her parents in her life. She deserves love and stability. And if that means swallowing our pride and our pain to co-parent effectively, then that's what we'll do. At least, that's what I tell myself on the good days. On the bad days, I still cry for what we lost and for how we ended up here. Comment. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is stand firm in your truth when everyone else doubts you. It takes incredible strength to walk away from a toxic situation and rebuild your life from scratch. I truly believe forgiveness is not about excusing bad behavior, but about releasing the heavy burden of anger. We have to remember that peace of mind is worth more than trying to please people who do not respect us. Setting boundaries is a necessary form of self-care that protects your future and your happiness. Even when plans fall apart, there is always a way to create a new kind of beautiful life. Resilience is defined by how you rise after the fall, not by the fall itself. Let's promise ourselves that we will prioritize healthy environments and honest relationships. You are worthy of trust, loyalty, and a love that does not need to be questioned. Keep moving forward with grace, because the best revenge is simply living well and being happy. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.